You are watching Notepad. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. As usual, it's the final week of the year, and we tend to do a quick summary or stock take into how the year has been, and of course, try to see what businesses are up to in the next few weeks as we celebrate the incoming of the new year. One big major theme of this year is, of course, how businesses have adopted to e-commerce as a primary method of channel to communicate and deliver goods and services to their customers, and at the same time how the small, micro even, and medium-sized industries are adapting to the changes brought about by the pandemic. Now, one company is assisting all these companies to get themselves online and be ready as quick as ever to get themselves selling as much as possible, seamlessly through all the possible solutions as possible to deliver their goods and services online on e-commerce. This company is, of course, Commerce Asia. So joining me is Sam Shin-Gern, the Chief Operating Officer of Commerce Asia. Sam, thanks for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim.
So let's do a quick summary into Commerce Asia. What do you guys do?
So to summarize it, we are an ecosystem of companies in e-commerce, helping SMEs and brands grow their business online as well in Malaysia as well as in the region.
What does that mean?
It means that we handle end-to-end of the entire e-commerce activity for our brands and clients. Everything from managing the e-commerce store on the marketplaces to doing their fulfillment and delivery, to marketing, spreading out the word, building demand for our clients. So we are an end-to-end service provider where we can tailor our solutions to your business needs.
Okay, so let's assume that I am going to sell something online, and I can hop on to all the e-commerce channels out there, Shopee, Lazada, you name it.
Yeah.
And I can do this right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How is it different if we see businesses use your solution as opposed to my just getting it on there?
Sure. So before I jump right into it, Commerce Asia essentially, we have about 10 companies under our umbrella. And so we have companies that specializes in fulfillment. We have companies that specializes in the management of an e-commerce store itself. And so we have different services that we can provide to a client wanting to sell on e-commerce itself. And every part of that value chain is something that Commerce Asia can provide as a service, as well as managing the entire thing from end to end itself. So to answer your question, yes, anybody now can be on Lazada, anybody now can set up shop on Shopee as well. But as we all know, 2020 is a year of e-commerce, and one of the greatest challenge that as local SMEs face here is to compete in a extremely or increasingly more competitive marketplace itself. And so, right now we are not only competing, or merchants in Malaysia are not only competing amongst each other, but we're also competing heavily against international players. And so Commerce Asia can essentially accelerate that growth, where we can take the best of our solution, take the best practice that we've gained across the entire industry, and apply it to our clients itself.
So what are the best practices that you're willing to share right now with the public? What kind of learnings have you gotten?
And so, in terms of e-commerce, I think it's important to first understand that e-commerce isn't necessarily something new. Yes, we speak of it as a new channel, but ultimately what e-commerce is it provides a different avenue for users to shop. It's as simple as that. But the key point here is that it is ultimately still a user, the consumer itself. So the way we see e-commerce is that e-commerce is an enabler, is one of a channel, right, to an increasing level of complexity in terms of communication and interactivity between brands or merchants or SMEs together with consumers itself. So the best practices for e-commerce will be things like, for example, let's all start with the marketplace, right? We believe that the marketplace are there. They have a lot of users. It is definitely a channel that merchants should tap into. And so being good at your marketplace game, is step number one for most merchants, depending on the product, depending on the target audience itself. Right, being strong on the marketplace, making sure that, for example, that the images that you post are clean, and that the product description, it has all the information that is needed by your consumer itself, making sure that you ship your products out from your warehouse on time within the SLAs, right? Making sure that customer service responds to inquiries, right, within minutes, right? And so these are all little things, but they are very fundamental in making sure that you have your e-commerce operations in check. That's number one, right? Once you have your e-commerce operations in check, in place, running smoothly like clockwork, that's when we can also start working on the growing demand itself, right? So start thinking out of the box on how to creatively reach out to your audience, right? So that you stay relevant to them itself.
What you're trying to say is that we have to think about execution flawlessly when it comes to e-commerce. That's the part where a lot of businesses tend to not focus on. They focus on all the other things, which is a lot already. Does it mean that you are, in a way, trying to cross the T's and dot the I's and making sure that everything is tip-top and in order so that the business themselves can start to think about other things like the demand of their goods and services, and perhaps even some of the markets that they want to think about entering, not just domestically, but some international markets that might be interesting for them to go into? Is that what Commerce Asia is all about?
Being good in operations is key today. If you look at e-commerce in Malaysia just 2 years back, the average time that consumers are willing to wait for their products are a lot higher than what it is today, right? So consumer demand is changing as well. So yes, you got to cross the T's and the I's and the dots and everything, but also keep in mind that consumer demand is increasing by the minute, right? And we cannot, in fact, rest on our laurels a single bit at all, even on the operation side, right? But like I said, the operation side of things are absolutely critical, because it's just like the experience of offline retail itself. Whenever you go offline, you buy something, you almost certainly walk out of the shop with your products, right? Whereas in e-commerce, this is still not the case, right? So being able to give a more consistent service to your buyers, to your consumers, will essentially help build this habit, this behavior of buying from you, from your online store itself, right? If not, I'll rather buy from someone else who can keep his words, who who do marketing a lot better than this current brand, who shows up, in terms of digital real estate, right, in front of consumers a lot more than other brands who are not so willing to invest in the marketing and branding part of it.
Let's strip this down to the two models of e-commerce that I know of. Perhaps you can correct me and realign my view. There's one model where we go after the malls, I suppose, in terms of Lazada and Shopee and the likes. That's one type. Another one is I can create my own brand.com storefront and perhaps build my own app and build my own whatever that is required in order for me to get access to my customers. Now both have pro and con, but on that storefront side, my own personal storefront, I can control everything from the things that you mentioned just now: customer experience, user experience, all that. But when I go over this larger kind of e-commerce sites, I don't have much control. I'm just a vendor. I'm just putting up my products, and everything else has to be managed by them, not just in the fulfillment and all the other areas as well, but the look and feel, the experience, the cart, the shopping cart, the checkout process, everything is handled by them. What's your view on these two models, and perhaps the way a business can actually improve themselves online and try to sell themselves better on using either model?
Yeah, okay. So so perhaps I would like to take a step back to examine these two models in the world itself, right? So the first model that you mentioned about the marketplace, right? Lazada and Shopee, everything is there, everything is structured, right? We don't have much control, or merchants don't have much control over how they would like to complete a transaction, for example, deliver our goods. this model of the marketplace being extremely strong is prevalent in China, a lot more prevalent in China, right? Yes, Amazon is very strong as well in its own right.
Yeah, I was about to say that actually. I mean, they are the giant of e-commerce in the US. Yeah.
Yes, they are the giant of e-commerce in US. However, the brand.com movement, or rather popularity, is a lot more popular in the US than it is in China. So China is very platform specific. A lot of e-commerce is built around the big three, your JD.com, your Alibaba, obviously, and then also Pinduoduo itself. Whereas in the US, it's primarily Amazon in terms of marketplace, 70% market share, right? However, they also have a lot of brand.com. So the experience of e-commerce shopping in China and the experience of e-commerce shopping in the US, it is quite different. And I've been lucky to be able to spend 3 years in China and 7 years in the US. And what I see happening in Malaysia right now is a struggle, or a battle of two separate cultures and two separate set of preferences when it comes to e-commerce, right? If you look at just from simple things like design, if you look at the design of Lazada and Shopee, the homepage of it, and you compare that to design in general of internet products in China, you would see a lot of similarities, right? The way they design it, you have a banner at the top, you have radio buttons in the middle, right? Same thing with Grab, right? Grab is also moving towards that direction. So you can clearly see a lot of Chinese influence in our e-commerce scene, right? And also towards our design in general. But whereas in the US, if you looked up the way, for example, Wish or the way Amazon designed their application itself, they are more similar to each other. So in Malaysia, is very interesting right now to me, because like we are in the middle of these two giants from a cultural point of view, from an economical point of view, from a political power point of view, and Malaysia, we're navigating through this very, very, I would say, these two very separate.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're trying to get at. The question is, who will win? Where will Malaysia go? What type of solution will we choose?
Well, I think what's interesting in Malaysia is that we almost have like a third section to this, which is the agent-based model. So Commerce Asia, we invested in a company called BizApp earlier this year, and BizApp is an agent management platform. So what it does is a platform that connects your principals, or your brands with your stockists and your agents itself. So this form of buying and selling, where the agents would then sell, would be the seller to buyers. This form of selling is also a form of selling that we see is growing very quickly in Malaysia itself. That's not very common in both the US and China, right? So if you ask me who's going to be the winner, I would say that marketplaces are definitely here to stay, right? But also, like what you mentioned about marketplaces, everything is set, right? In terms of discount mechanics, promotion as well, it is set. They are not that, you can't be overly creative because of the limitations by the platforms itself. And that's when a brand.com play, right, would allow brands and merchants to be very creative, to localize, in fact, right, all their campaigns, all the content. And so I think this is the next big opportunity for Malaysia itself, right? It's actually through e-commerce plays outside the marketplaces. The marketplaces will always be there to provide reliable, affordable products. But at the same time, I think it's through the brand.com web store, it's through your live commerce, social commerce play that you can really localize and stand out amongst the consumers here in Malaysia.
Fantastic. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Sam Shingan of Commerce Asia. We'll be right back after these messages. Thanks for staying on. I have with me on the line Sam Shingan, the COO of Commerce Asia. Sam, we've spoken a little bit more about the whole idea or the trajectory of where commerce or e-commerce will be in the near term. My question to you is on consumer behavior. Like it or not, Malaysia is rather advanced across, compared against other markets in terms of adoption for new technology. And with mobile penetration rate very high, internet penetration rate also very high, and the integrated marketplace that we have with each other, with Singapore, with Indonesia, with Thailand and Vietnam, of course, the rising star of Asia. It seems like we are poised to be a market leader in terms of behavioral changes, in terms of how we buy and sell online. So my question to you is, has 2020 changed the way consumers behaved online based on your research?
Oh, definitely. So the way that we see consumers behave very differently online is actually through the observation of the average age of purchases. And so the average age of purchases have clearly gone up during this pandemic itself. So we are seeing a lot more people in their 50s and 60s participating in e-commerce as well right now. And so that these are very, very encouraging signs, right? It's similar to China itself. In China, e-commerce touches everyone from the teenagers all the way to people in their 70s and 80s and even 90s. And so this is a very encouraging sign for me. And I see this as the basically this industry growing and maturing. You're absolutely right. Our internet adoption rate here, our mobile adoption or e-commerce adoption rate is extremely high relative to the region itself. But one point I would like to make is that, like, to keep this going, we need to continue localizing our e-commerce scene, right? So we need to continue creating a method of trading between consumers and sellers in a way that is suitable for the locals. Not to say that the current ways are not suitable, but there are better ways. There are better ways to connect with your consumers. There are better ways in terms of our operation infrastructure, our logistics infrastructure. There are a lot of improvements that we have to make. And this is why I'm also quite excited about our market, because our consumers here are very open-minded. They're ready to adopt any new technology or even try out new platforms. And so it's just a matter of time where we start seeing more local players emerging to draw the attention of our local consumers itself.
All right, let's move back to the company itself, the Commerce Asia company itself, because as a solution provider, you're trying to help a lot of your clients, most of them in the SME sector, try to be a little bit more savvy online. How does strategic investment within technology enablers do you think is going to alleviate your operations in helping your clients?
If I take it one step back again, we believe very deeply in integrating technology into our day-to-day operations. So in fact, we do most of our development in-house. And if we take a step back, you would see that, like, one of the most stable drivers of long-term growth is technology, right? And capital and labor are important, but for long-term growth, technology is seen as one of the better drivers out there. And so, with that being said, when it comes to our investment strategy itself, we look out for partners, or we look out for startups out there that invest heavily in their technology stack itself, that invest in integrating across all platforms and channels, because you have to understand that, like, our e-commerce scene in Malaysia is also very different from both the US and China, right? Because we don't actually create a lot of these platforms. So we are, we don't actually build it from ground up. So being able to integrate across platforms would be key.
There's also that whole theme of job losses throughout the year. A lot of people are facing maybe not necessarily job loss outright. There's also a job insecurity as well. Underemployment is an issue, not just unemployment. How does the company, how does Commerce Asia look at how, by helping SME merchants solve their retail business crisis, do you think that this can actually help that whole overarching picture of job losses that's happening, not just in this country, but in the region as well?
Yeah, I'm not certain if the job creation in e-commerce is enough to offset the job loss in the retail industry, because in e-commerce, the amount of human interaction between sellers and buyers is significantly much lesser, right, compared to offline retail. Every time you walk in the shop, you get to interact with someone, you get to ask questions to someone, and you get a response within seconds, right? Whereas in e-commerce, you see that big difference. And so, however, e-commerce will create a lot of jobs in the operation, the warehousing and fulfillment side of things. It would also create jobs in terms of software engineering, right? Building these platforms, connecting and integrating platforms across the industry itself. So I'm not certain if the net job gain will be better with e-commerce, but one thing for certain is that e-commerce definitely increases the efficiency of trading goods with money itself. So we probably won't see this benefit in the job numbers itself, but in terms of individuals' efficiency, that has been clearly stated by the consumers that we've looked into, that efficiency is one of the key factors of them buying online.
Fantastic. Okay, let's now talk about some of the success stories that you have helped. Would you like to share some case studies of some of your clients that you have guided them through this whole journey of digitizing their business?
Yeah, so we focus in three broad categories: FMCG, health and wellness, and home and living itself. And we have a client that started out with us exactly a year ago in December, and we recently had a 1-year anniversary review thing. And what we have done for them, simply put, was to grow their sales by 25x in 12 months, right? And we are not saying, this merchant started from 1 ringgit and grew to 25x. Nope, this merchant was already running their own e-commerce operations. They were also subbing out to someone else to do it. But we actually managed to get them to grow by 25x to become the #1 seller in their category across Shopee and Lazada itself. So this is something that we've done for them, and we provide them an end-to-end service. So everything from identifying the type of products that you should be selling, or maybe even thinking about how you brand your certain product itself, to taking pictures of the product, to listing it on the marketplaces, managing it, customer service, fulfillment and delivery, end-to-end, live commerce, social commerce, all of that. But what we are doing for them as well, on top of just growing their local presence and their e-commerce locally, is to bring them regionally. So right now, Commerce Asia Enterprise, we are already in Thailand, Vietnam, as well as Singapore, with Indonesia and Philippines coming up in the next quarter itself. So the way we see our role in Malaysia is to help our local SMEs and brands first grow their presence in Malaysia, first understand the type of value propositions that their company, their organization, their products is able to provide to consumers itself. And then secondly, we would roll them out regionally with our specialized, localized teams in these countries respectively.
What would be some of the biggest learnings that you have gotten from working with this particular client of yours over the past 1 year?
Well, the biggest learning that we've gotten is that it takes two. It takes two to tango really nicely. And the way we see our relationship with our clients is more of on a partnership basis. In fact, with most of our clients, we just work with one PIC in the client itself, and we would do everything end to end. So that's the type of relationship that we would like to have with our clients. But the biggest, most important thing that we've learned is that this is not a client-vendor relationship. This is a partnership type relationship, because you have to understand that e-commerce moves really quickly. Right, it's very hard to structure things since last year December and hope that things don't change. No, that's not true, right? So in August itself, customer service on weekends are a lot more important to marketplaces. So then we have to change up our service, we have to change up our commercial agreement with them, and so it's about being agile. It's about having that level of trust with your client as well as partners.
What would be some of the messages that you want to share with SME owners right now watching this interview? What's 2021 going to be like for them, and what would be some of the opportunities that they need to take charge and seize that kind of opportunities that is literally right in front of them? What would be some of the messages that you have for them?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I think the one key thing that I would advise SMEs out there is to first not get inundated, not get overwhelmed by all these different channels, right? Not only Shopee and Lazada, you now have live commerce on Facebook, you have live commerce on the individual platforms itself, e-wallets are starting to get into e-commerce as well. And so it's very easy to feel overwhelmed by all of this. So the one key message we always drive home to our clients, to our SMEs, to our brands, so regardless if you're S or if you're a brand, is to let's just pause and let's take another temperature check on our buyers, right? Let's check again on your buyer's persona and see what has changed. Because let me tell you, a lot has changed in the past 12 months, from the channels that they prefer, from the type of companies that they would like to buy for. Are you more socially conscious or are you not? Are you relatable to your consumers in 2020 or in 2021 itself? So I think these are the thing. This is the one advice, if I can only give one, to SMEs, is to re-examine their customer base and keep in mind that there are a lot more sellers today in our e-commerce scene than we had a year ago. So what you learned a year ago and what you know of now can be very, very different. So we do this all the time with our clients. We do this on a quarterly basis. Let's take a back seat and was our previous assumption on who our target audience is, on our product market fit, right? Are those still holding true?
Fantastic. That's a very good advice. Thanks, Sam. That was Sam Shingun, the Chief Operating Officer of Commerce Asia. If you've missed any part of this interview, just head on to astroawani.com, look for Notepad over there. But for now, that's it from me, most probably for the year. So see you next year, and thanks very much for watching.